The resignation letter trembles in my hands again as I stare at the name at the bottom. Margaret Whitfield. The name is typed, stark and black against the white paper, but it feels like it's branded there. I've seen that name countless times in my nightmares, heard it whispered in my moments of self-doubt. Now it's on a job application for my foundation. The coffee in my corner office, usually a comforting ritual, has gone cold, forgotten on the polished mahogany of my ridiculously large desk. I can still smell its bitter aroma, a sharp counterpoint to the rich, grounding scent of the leather chair I'm sitting in. The chair I bought specifically to remind myself that I made it, that I'm in control. It's a ridiculously expensive chair, a statement. But today it just feels like a cage. My assistant Chloe, her voice usually a soothing balm, echoes through the intercom, tinny and distant. Miss Chen, should I schedule the interview with Miss Whitfield for tomorrow? My breath catches. Panic, cold and sharp, pricks at my skin for just a moment. A ghost of the 16-year-old girl she tried to break. My finger hovers over the response button, a tiny red light blinking like a warning. After 12 long years, Margaret Whitfield, the architect of my deepest insecurities and, ironically, my most potent motivation, wants to work for me. The irony, oh, the irony, tastes sweeter, sharper, more complex than I ever expected. It's a bitter, dark chocolate kind of sweet. The Chen Foundation for Educational Equity. My name, emblazoned on the frosted glass of the double doors leading into our suite. It sits high and proud on the 40th floor of one of downtown Seattle's newest skyscrapers, a testament to sleepless nights, relentless drive, and a stubborn refusal to be erased. From my expansive window, the one that takes up an entire wall and makes me feel like I'm floating above the city, I can see Lincoln High School. Its old brick facade looks almost quaint from this distance, deceptively innocent. But I know the truth. That's where it all began. Where she, Margaret Whitfield, with 6 carefully chosen words, tried to shatter a young girl's dreams. Those words still echo in the quiet corners of my mind, especially on days like today. You'll never amount to anything. The rhythmic drumming of rain against the floor-to-ceiling windows is a constant Seattle soundtrack, a sound I usually find soothing. Today it feels like a countdown, each drop a tick of the clock. I built this place, this foundation, brick by metaphorical brick to prove her wrong. Every single scholarship we award, every bright, underprivileged kid we pluck from obscurity and send to college, every systemic barrier we dismantle, it's all a monument to her misjudgment. It's all because Margaret Whitfield told a hopeful, naive 16-year-old girl she'd never amount to anything. The irony isn't lost on me that she now seeks to be a part of the very thing her negativity fueled. Perhaps she sees it as a way to rewrite her own history, or perhaps it's something more cynical. I can't tell yet. My phone buzzes on the desk, a sharp, insistent vibration that cuts through my reverie. A text from my business partner, James. He's more than a partner. He's my best friend, the one person who knows the whole ugly story, the one who picked me up and dusted me off more times than I can count. James. The board meeting is in 2 hours. Are you really going to interview your old teacher? The one who haunts your therapy sessions? I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding, trying to liberate myself from the suffocating grip of the memory. It clings like smoke, that classroom, her voice. I force myself to focus on the present, on the stack of applications piled neatly on my desk. 43 individuals, 43 people who believe in our mission, who want to be part of what we're building. 42 of them are strangers, names and qualifications on paper. And then there's her, Margaret Whitfield. Her application isn't at the top, nor is it at the bottom. Chloe, bless her efficient heart, alphabetized them. Whitfield M. My hand hovers over the stack. It would be so easy to discard it, to pretend it never arrived. No one would question it. James would probably throw a party. But that's not me. That's not how I operate. This is a quiet power move one she'll never see coming, one that even I am unsure of the outcome of. I decide to read Margaret's application, every single word. Her cover letter is 3 pages long, a rambling dissertation on her passion for education. I skim through the predictable buzzwords: transformative education, equity-driven initiatives, holistic student development. It's standard, almost painfully so. The kind of language that fills education journals and conference brochures, but rarely translates into tangible change. It's the kind of talk I've learned to be wary of. But then, I reach the personal statement, the section where applicants are encouraged to share something more, something real. I've made mistakes in my career, she writes. The words leap off the page. I've failed students who deserved better, students whose potential I was too blind or too frightened to see. I'm applying to the Chen Foundation because I believe in second chances, both for the students we serve and, perhaps selfishly, for educators like myself who wish to make amends for past errors and contribute to a more just future. My breath hitches. She knows. She has to know. The Chen Foundation. Maya Chen. It's not a common name. She remembers me. This isn't just a random application, it's a direct address, a calculated move. The carefully crafted sentences feel less like a plea for a job and more like an opening gambit in a game I didn't even know we were playing. The question is, what does she truly want? Is this a genuine attempt at atonement, a desire to contribute to the very cause she once dismissed in me? Or is it something else? A way to get close, to find a comfortable landing spot in a prestigious organization, riding on the coattails of the student she once tried to ground? My mind races with possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. The rain outside picks up its tempo, mirroring the sudden turmoil inside me. 12 years ago, Lincoln High School. The fluorescent lights in Mrs. Whitfield's AP English classroom always flickered. It wasn't a gentle, occasional flicker. It was a constant, irritating strobe that cast unpredictable dancing shadows on the worn textbooks and the posters of Shakespeare and Dickinson taped to the cinder block walls. The buzz they emitted was a low, incessant hum, like a swarm of angry insects trapped just above our heads, a soundtrack to the slow march of adolescence. It made everything feel unstable, temporary, like the very foundations of the room could give way at any moment. I can still hear that buzz, clear as day if I close my eyes. Sometimes when I'm stressed, I think I can still smell the dry erase markers and the faint, lingering aroma of stale coffee that always permeated her small, cluttered office space at the back of the room. I was 16. 16, and in my own naive way, fearless. Or maybe just too innocent to understand the true nature of fear yet. I was clutching a slightly crumpled, already reread a dozen times acceptance letter to the summer coding camp at MIT. Not just any coding camp, but the coding camp. The one that was a direct pipeline to the best computer science programs in the country. Full scholarship. It was a golden ticket, a Willy Wonka-esque miracle for a girl like me. I was going to be the first person in my family to even dream of stepping onto a campus like MIT, let alone attend a program there. My parents, immigrants who worked double shifts at the bakery and spoke English with accents thick with the hopes and sacrifices of a generation, didn't fully understand what it meant, but they saw the light in my eyes and that was enough for them. Mrs. Whitfield, I got in! The words burst out of me, a joyful explosion. I'd practically flown down the hallway after the final bell, my worn backpack, heavy with textbooks and dreams, hitting the doorframe of her classroom with a dull, unceremonious thud as I skidded to a halt. The coding camp, they accepted me. Full scholarship. She looked up from her gradebook, a red pen poised mid-correction. Her reading glasses, small, owlish, and perpetually smudged, were perched on the end of her nose, acting as a sort of barrier between us, a physical manifestation of the distance she always seemed to maintain. Margaret Whitfield taught AP English with a dry, academic precision, but everyone at Lincoln High knew she was the unofficial, often reluctant guidance counselor for kids like me. The ones from the other side of the tracks, the scholarship kids, the ones whose parents wouldn't be attending PTA meetings or making donations to the school fund. She was the gatekeeper of realistic expectations. The air in her classroom was always thick with the smell of old paper, floor wax, and that ever-present scent of dry erase markers and her lukewarm coffee. It was a smell I usually associated with quiet study, with the promise of learning. That day, it would become the scent of my first major heartbreak. Maya. She removed her glasses, a slow, deliberate gesture, and placed them carefully on a stack of student essays. Her eyes, a pale, washed-out blue, seemed to assess me, not with pride, but with a kind of weary resignation. Sit down. I practically vibrated with excitement, my body thrumming with an energy I couldn't contain. I didn't register the flatness in her tone, the lack of warmth in her eyes. I sat on the edge of one of the hard plastic student chairs, my hands still clutching the precious letter. Fear hadn't even entered the equation, not yet. You need to be realistic about your future, Maya, she said, her voice devoid of emotion, clinical and precise, like she was dissecting a particularly troublesome piece of prose. These coding camps, these computer science programs at elite universities, these aren't for girls like you. Girls like you. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt a chill creep over my skin despite the stuffy classroom air. What do you mean, girls like me? I stammered, the joy draining out of me like water from a sieve. You come from a working-class family, she continued, her gaze unwavering. Your parents, they work hard, I know. They need you to contribute financially soon, not to be off chasing these impossible dreams. She gestured vaguely with her hand, as if dismissing the entire tech industry with a flick of her wrist. It's a fantasy. The words hit me like physical blows, each one landing with a sickening thud in my chest. My carefully constructed world of hope and possibility began to crumble. But I'm good at it, I pleaded, my voice small, desperate. I'm really good at it. I taught myself Python. I built an app for the school library to help students find books faster. Mr. Henderson in the computer lab said it was innovative. Maya. She stood up then, her worn corduroy blazer rustling. The sound of her chair scraping against the cheap linoleum floor was harsh, grating. It was a sound of finality. You'll never amount to anything in tech. It's a man's world, Maya. A highly competitive, cutthroat world. And frankly, she paused, as if searching for the kindest way to deliver the cruelest blow. You don't have the background, the connections, or the resources to compete effectively. You'll be eaten alive. Her gaze softened, but it was a condescending sort of softness, the kind you offer a child who doesn't understand why they can't have candy for dinner. Focus on something practical, something attainable. Community college is a fine option. Perhaps a trade, secretarial work maybe. Something to help your family. A cold rage, unfamiliar and terrifying, began to uncoil in my stomach. It wasn't just the dismissal of my dreams, it was the dismissal of me, of my capabilities, of my right to even try. It was the casual cruelty of her assumptions, the neat little box she was trying to shove me into. This was my quiet power move, though I didn't know it then. A flicker of defiance sparked within me. I wouldn't cry, not in front of her. I snatched my acceptance letter from her desk, the paper crinkling in my fist. Her words, "Never amount to anything," echoed in the sudden, ringing silence of the classroom. I turned and walked out. I didn't run, I didn't shout. I walked with my head held as high as I could manage, each step a small rebellion, even as her pronouncement followed me down the dimly lit hallway like a pair of hungry ghosts, nipping at my heels. That night, under the flickering bulb of my desk lamp in my tiny shared bedroom, the city lights of Seattle, a distant, indifferent glow outside my window, I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my secondhand laptop. I applied for student loans I barely understood, filling out forms with terms like deferment and interest rates that felt like a foreign language. And I made a silent, solemn promise to myself, a vow whispered into the darkness, a promise that would become the compass for the next 12 years of my life. I would prove her wrong. I would amount to something. And one day, I wouldn't just survive in that man's world she spoke of. I would help redefine it. The decision wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every girl who would come after me, every kid told they weren't enough. The weight of it settled on my young shoulders, heavy but somehow fortifying. The years between, I went to that MIT coding camp anyway. Her words, instead of extinguishing the fire in my belly, had fanned it into a roaring inferno. I worked 3 jobs that summer to pay for the incidentals the scholarship didn't cover. Slinging lukewarm coffee at a campus cafe from 6 a.m. to noon, shelving dusty tomes in the hushed silence of the university library in the afternoons, and tutoring struggling undergraduates in basic calculus late into the evenings. The texture of worn textbook pages became as familiar to my fingertips as the keys on my laptop. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't often afford, usually a snatched 4 hours a night if I was lucky. I survived on vending machine coffee that tasted metallic and vaguely of burnt plastic, and a sheer, unadulterated, stubborn determination. The campus, with its imposing buildings and aura of intellectual rigor, should have been intimidating. Instead, it felt like coming home. I was surrounded by people who spoke my language, who dreamed in algorithms and saw the world in lines of code. When it came time for college applications, MIT accepted me for early admission. The irony was that Mrs. Whitfield, as my AP English teacher, was required to write me a recommendation letter. I almost didn't ask her, but it was a requirement for the scholarship I was also applying for. The letter she produced was a masterpiece of faint praise. It was lukewarm at best, filled with carefully chosen, damningly mediocre phrases like adequate effort in class and shows promise in limited, traditionally female-oriented areas of language. She even managed to subtly weave in her concerns about my ambitious, but perhaps unrealistic aspirations. I still have that letter somewhere, tucked away in a file I ironically labeled motivation. It's a reminder of the low bar some people set for others and the satisfaction of leaping clear over it. College itself was a relentless, exhilarating blur, a whirlwind of complex coding projects that stretched my mind to its limits, caffeine-fueled all-night hackathons, and intense programming competitions where I was often one of only a handful of women. I learned to navigate the subtle and not-so-subtle biases, the surprise on some professors' faces when I aced an exam, the condescending explanations from male classmates who assumed I needed help. Each instance was a fresh log on the fire, pushing me to work harder, to be better, to prove myself over and over again. The metallic taste of too much caffeine was a constant companion, a reminder of the hours poured into my craft. I launched my first startup at 19 from my cramped dorm room with two equally sleep-deprived and idealistic classmates. It was a tutoring app designed to connect low-income high school students with qualified peer mentors from universities. We called it Bridge the Gap. It failed spectacularly and rather publicly within the small campus tech scene within 6 months. We ran out of money, made every rookie mistake in the book, and learned the hard way that a good idea isn't enough. But that failure, as painful and humiliating as it was at the time, taught me more about resilience, about business, about the grit required to succeed than any lecture or textbook ever could. The second startup stuck, EduBridge. It was a more ambitious project born from the ashes of the first, an AI-powered adaptive learning platform that personalized educational content to each student's unique learning pace and style. It analyzed their strengths, weaknesses, and engagement patterns, and adjusted the curriculum in real time. It was the kind of tech I wished I'd had access to in high school. We bootstrapped it, working out of a tiny, windowless office that always smelled faintly of burnt popcorn. For 3 grueling years, it consumed my life. There were moments I was so exhausted, so close to giving up, that Mrs. Whitfield's voice would echo in my head, a taunting whisper, "See, I told you, you're not cut out for this." And each time I'd clench my jaw, down another cup of coffee, and dive back into the code. Then, the breakthrough. A glowing review in a major tech journal, a sudden surge in user adoption, investor interest. 3 years after its shaky launch, almost to the day, Google came knocking. They acquired EduBridge for $47 million. The number felt abstract, unreal. I was 24. This was my quiet power move, a defining one. I didn't buy a sprawling mansion or a flashy sports car, the typical extravagances of the newly minted tech millionaire. The thought felt hollow, unsatisfying. Instead, I moved back to Seattle. And with a significant portion of the acquisition money, I bought the 4-story commercial building directly across the street from Lincoln High School. It was an old, slightly dilapidated office building, but its location was perfect. From what would become my office on the top floor, I could see directly into Mrs. Whitfield's former classroom, room 212, every single day. It was a constant, silent reminder. The Chen Foundation for Educational Equity launched 2 years ago. Our mission was simple, starkly clear in my mind. Ensure no kid ever has to hear what I heard in that classroom. Ensure no student's potential is ever dismissed because of their zip code, their parents' income, or a teacher's limited vision. In just 2 short years, we've awarded over 200 full scholarships to four-year universities. We've funded and launched 12 community-based coding boot camps in underserved neighborhoods across Washington state. We've partnered with community colleges to help over 500 students successfully transition to four-year degree programs, providing them with mentorship, resources, and financial aid. We were making a difference, a tangible, measurable difference. The ticking clock element that always seemed to shadow my life wasn't just about personal ambition anymore. It was about the urgent need to level the playing field for as many students as possible, as quickly as possible. And now, somehow, defying all logic and expectation, Margaret Whitfield, the woman who was the unwitting catalyst for so much of this, wants to be a part of it. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor, or perhaps a profound sense of justice. Present day, 1 hour before the interview. The door to my office bursts open and James strides in, a man on a mission. He's balancing 2 steaming cups of coffee with the practiced ease of someone who's done this 1,000 times, and he's wearing his "we need to talk and you're not going to like it" expression. It's a look I know well, a combination of furrowed brow, tight jaw, and an intensity in his eyes that means he's about to challenge me on something he feels strongly about. The steam from the cups creates small, ephemeral clouds between us as he approaches my desk. The aroma of freshly brewed dark roast, usually a welcome scent, feels heavy, charged. "You can't seriously be considering hiring her," he says, his voice low and firm, setting my coffee down on the coaster with a little more force than necessary. The ceramic clinks sharply against the glass desk protector. I take a slow, deliberate inhale of the rich aroma, letting it ground me, a small anchor in the swirling currents of my thoughts. "And why not, James?" I ask, keeping my tone even, betraying none of the turmoil inside. Her credentials, on paper, are solid. 25 years in education, experience across 3 different school districts, successfully led curriculum development initiatives, glowing references from her last 2 principals. Maya. James collapses into the chair opposite my desk, the one usually reserved for important visitors or difficult conversations. He leans forward, his elbows on his knees, his gaze unwavering and piercing. His voice softens, losing its accusatory edge and taking on a gentler, more concerned tone. "This isn't about her paper credentials, and you know it. This is about Margaret Bloody Whitfield. She's the reason you have trust issues the size of Mount Rainier with anyone in a position of authority. She's why you meticulously check and double-check, and then triple-check every single hire we make, down to the interns. She's why you personally interview every single scholarship recipient, spending hours listening to their stories, searching their faces for that spark she tried to extinguish in you. She's why I built something that matters," I interrupt, my voice quiet but firm. My fingers trace the smooth, cool edge of my coffee cup, feeling the warmth seep through the ceramic, a small comfort. Why this foundation exists. Maybe in a twisted way, I owe her for that. James sighs, running a hand through his already tousled hair. "That's the problem, Maya. You see everything through the lens of her. This isn't about revenge or proving a point anymore. You've already done that 1,000 times over. This is about the foundation, about its integrity, about the kids." An unexpected wave of vulnerability washes over me, and I hate it. I hate feeling exposed, uncertain. "What if she's changed?" I ask, and the question comes out smaller, more fragile than I intended. My voice sounds like a 16-year-old's again, unsure and hopeful against all odds. People can change, can't they? What if she genuinely wants to help these kids now? What if all those years, all those experiences, actually taught her something? James leans even further forward, his expression earnest. "And what if she hasn't, Maya? What if this is just a job to her? A well-paid, prestigious position at a rapidly growing foundation? What if she's just looking for a comfortable place to land before retirement? You'd be giving her power, actual influence over the very same kind of kids she dismissed and discouraged 12 years ago. Can you live with that risk?" The sound of the rain, which had momentarily softened, intensifies against the vast expanse of my office windows. It's a sudden deluge, a gray sheet lashing against the glass. A flash of lightning briefly illuminates the familiar red brick of Lincoln High School across the street, and for a disorienting second, I'm transported back, 16 again, walking down that sterile, flickering hallway with my head held high and my heart silently breaking into a million pieces. The air in my state of the art office suddenly feels as oppressive as that stuffy classroom. I push the memory away, focusing on James, on the here and now. This is another quiet power move, a decision made not from a place of anger or revenge, but from a place of curiosity, a need for closure. I'm not entirely sure, but I know I have to see this through. Schedule the interview, Chloe, I say into the intercom, my voice steadier now. Then, looking at James, I add, but I want you there, in the room. And I want Sarah from HR to observe as well, full panel. James studies me for a long moment, his eyes searching mine. He knows me too well. He knows this isn't just about filling a position. Maya, he warns, his voice laced with apprehension. Whatever you're planning, whatever game you think you're playing here, remember? This isn't just about your personal history anymore. It's about every single kid who walks through our doors looking for a shred of hope, a flicker of belief. Don't let your past jeopardize their future. His words hang in the air, heavy and significant. The mini cliffhanger isn't just for him. It's for me, too. What am I planning? And can I truly separate the personal from the professional when the personal is the very bedrock upon which the professional was built? Margaret Whitfield looks smaller than I remember. 12 years have carved new lines around her eyes and mouth, lines that speak of stress, or perhaps just the relentless passage of time. Her hair, once a nondescript brown, is now more salt than pepper, pulled back in a severe bun that does little to soften her features. She wears a navy blue suit, professional certainly, but it lacks the expensive tailoring I've grown accustomed to seeing in these interviews. It's the kind of suit someone wears when they genuinely need this job, when they're trying to project an image of competence that might be slightly at odds with their current circumstances. The faint scent of her perfume, something floral and vaguely outdated, like lilies tinged with mothballs, drifts across the space between us as she enters my office. It's a jarringly familiar scent, a ghost from that long-ago classroom. "Miss Chen," she says, her voice a little raspier than I recall. She extends her hand formally. "Thank you for this opportunity. It's an honor to be considered." Her handshake is firm, surprisingly so, but I notice the almost imperceptible tremor in her fingers. Nerves, perhaps. Or maybe, just maybe, it's the dawning recognition, the full weight of the situation finally settling upon her. "Please sit, Miss Whitfield." I gesture to the plush visitor's chair across my expansive mahogany desk, the same position James had occupied just an hour ago, pleading his case. The power dynamic has undeniably, irrevocably shifted. I am no longer the hopeful student seeking approval. She is the applicant, seeking validation, seeking a future from me. "This is James Wright, my co-founder and chief operating officer," I say, indicating James, who offers a curt professional nod. "And this is Sarah Kim, our director of human resources." Sarah smiles politely, her notebook and pen at the ready. For the first 20 minutes, it's a meticulously standard interview. James and Sarah take the lead, asking about her previous roles, her experience with curriculum design, her strategies for student engagement, her understanding of the challenges facing underserved communities. Margaret answers their questions with practiced ease. She's articulate, even passionate at times when she speaks about specific educational initiatives she spearheaded. She uses all the right terminology, cites relevant studies, presents herself as a seasoned, dedicated educator. It's a polished performance. But throughout it all, she keeps glancing at me, quick, furtive looks, her eyes filled with an expression I can't quite decipher. Is it guilt? Apprehension? Or just curiosity about the student she so casually dismissed, who now sits in the seat of power? Finally, after she finishes a lengthy explanation about a literacy program she implemented at her last school, I lean back in my leather chair, the one that's supposed to make me feel authoritative. I let the silence stretch for a moment. The only sound, the quiet, efficient hum of the building's advanced air conditioning system, a stark contrast to the flickering, buzzing chaos of her old classroom. Then, I ask the question that's been coiled tight in my throat for the past hour, for the past 12 years. "Why do you want to work here, Miss Whitfield?" I ask, my voice deliberately calm, neutral. "Specifically here, at the Chen Foundation?" The silence that follows is profound. It's thick, almost tangible, broken only by that incessant, sterile hum. James shifts slightly in his chair. Sarah's pen hovers above her notepad. Margaret Whitfield takes a slow, deep breath, the kind one takes before diving into deep water. And then, for the first time since she walked into my office, she looks directly at me, her gaze unwavering, holding mine. The years seem to fall away, and I see a flicker of the teacher I once knew, the one who held such sway over my young aspirations. Because I owe you an apology, Miss Chen, she says, her voice quiet but surprisingly clear, carrying across the expanse of my desk. And because I owe it to every student I failed over the years, every piece of potential I was too blind, too cynical, or too scared to nurture. My heart gives a sudden hard thump against my ribs, but I force my expression to remain impassive, a carefully constructed mask of professional detachment. I'm not sure I understand, Miss Whitfield. Maya Chen, she says, and hearing my full name from her lips, in this context, in this room, is like a jolt of electricity. It brings it all rushing back. The flickering fluorescent lights, the smell of dry erase markers, the crushing weight of her casual dismissal, the moment my dreams felt too big, too audacious, for the small, circumscribed reality she tried to impose on me. You were in my AP English class 12 years ago at Lincoln High. You were a bright girl. You came to me, so excited, so full of hope, about a summer coding camp at MIT, about your future in technology. This is my quiet power move. I don't react emotionally. I don't flinch. I don't let the sudden flood of memory show on my face. I remember, I say simply, my voice even. I told you. She pauses, and I can see her struggling with the words. The memory clearly as uncomfortable for her as it is for me, though for vastly different reasons. Her carefully maintained composure cracks just a little. I told you that you'd never amount to anything in tech, that it wasn't a place for girls like you, that you should be more realistic. James shoots me a quick, concerned look, but I keep my eyes fixed on Margaret. This is between her and me, 12 years in the making. Why, I ask, the single word cutting through the charged atmosphere. Why did you say that to me? What could possibly have been your motivation? The emotional revelation comes, not in a torrent, but in a slow, painful unburdening. Margaret's composure finally cracks. Her eyes, which had been so carefully neutral, now show a flicker of old pain, of regret. Because I was scared, she admits, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. I was scared for you, in my own misguided way, because I had seen so many bright, ambitious kids like you, from similar backgrounds, get their hopes up so high, only to face rejection after rejection, disappointment after soul-crushing disappointment. The system. It wasn't kind to students who didn't fit the traditional mold. I genuinely thought I was protecting you from inevitable disappointment. I thought I was being kind by trying to steer you towards what I perceived as a safer, more attainable path. She reaches into her structured, sensible purse and pulls out a folded, yellowed newspaper clipping. With slightly trembling hands, she smooths it out in her lap. My eyes are drawn to it. It's from the Seattle Times business section, dated 2 years ago. The headline, in bold black print, reads, Local tech entrepreneur Maya Chen launches multi-million-dollar foundation to bridge educational gap. Beneath it, a picture of me, smiling, cutting a ceremonial ribbon. The rustle of the old newspaper clipping is loud in the quiet room, a fragile sound from the past. I've followed your career, she admits, her voice thick with unshed tears. The startups, the sale to Google, the establishment of this foundation. I was wrong about you, Maya, so spectacularly, monumentally, harmfully wrong. The emotional climax arrives, not with a shout, but with a quiet intensity that fills the room. Do you have any idea what you did to me that day, Miss Whitfield? I ask, and for the first time, I allow a fraction of the hurt, the anger, the years of suppressed emotion to surface in my voice. I let my guard down just a little. You weren't just wrong about my potential in tech. That's almost irrelevant. You were fundamentally wrong about what a 16-year-old girl, standing on the precipice of her future, needed to hear from an adult she trusted. from an educator. I didn't need your misguided protection from disappointment. Disappointment is a part of life. I needed someone, just one person, in a position of influence to believe in me, to see that spark and fan it, not try to snuff it out. Margaret's eyes fill with tears, and this time, she doesn't try to hide them. They spill over, tracing paths down the lines on her cheeks. I know, she chokes out. And I have spent 12 long years watching you prove me wrong day after day, achievement after achievement, wishing with every fiber of my being that I could go back to that afternoon and take back those careless, cruel words. This is my moment of power, my moment of choice. I stand up slowly and walk to the expansive window, my back to her, to James, to Sarah. I look down at Lincoln High School, its familiar brick facade now bathed in the watery afternoon sun that has broken through the earlier rain. Students, tiny figures from this height, are walking across the courtyard, backpacks slung over their shoulders, heading home, their own dreams and anxieties tucked away, hopefully intact. The program director position here at the Chen Foundation, I say, my voice even, my gaze still fixed on the school below, involves directly mentoring high school students from underserved communities. Kids who've been told, in ways big and small, that they can't, that they shouldn't, that they won't succeed. Kids who remind me a lot of myself at 16. Yes, Margaret says quietly from behind me. I can hear the hope, the desperation in that single word. I turn back to face her. Can you look those kids in the eye, Miss Whitfield, and tell them with absolute conviction that they can achieve anything they set their minds to? Can you genuinely mean it after everything? The moment of truth hangs heavy in the air. Her answer will determine everything. Yes, she whispers, her voice raw with emotion. Then, stronger, with a newfound resolve that seems to straighten her spine, she repeats, Yes, Miss Chen, I can. Because I've seen firsthand the devastating cost of underestimating our students. I've seen what happens. I've seen you. 2 weeks later, Margaret Whitfield starts work on a crisp Monday morning in early October. The Seattle air is sharp with the scent of autumn, of decaying leaves, and the promise of winter. I watch from my 40th-floor office window as she walks across the street, not from the direction of a bus stop or a parking garage, but directly from the main entrance of Lincoln High School. She's carrying a reusable coffee cup in one hand and what looks like a worn leather satchel overflowing with papers. Lesson plans, perhaps, or notes from her transition, in the other. It's a small detail, her emerging from the school, but it feels significant, like a symbolic crossing. The smell of fresh coffee from my own cup mingles with the faint, cool autumn air drifting through the slightly open window, a scent of new beginnings. Her first official task, as outlined in her onboarding plan, is to review the first batch of scholarship applications for the upcoming academic year. Specifically, the applications from students currently attending Lincoln High School. I've deliberately, and perhaps a little pointedly, included this in her initial workload. It's not intended as a punishment, not entirely. It's an opportunity, a test of growth for her, a chance for her to see the faces, read the stories, feel the aspirations of the students she now has a chance to champion, the kind of student she once so easily dismissed. This is my quiet power move, a subtle but clear challenge. At precisely 10 a.m., I walk down the hallway from my corner suite to her new office. It's smaller than mine, of course, but still well-appointed, with a view that, while not as panoramic, still offers a clear sightline to Lincoln High. She's already surrounded by stacks of student files, her reading glasses perched on her nose in that exact, unforgettable way they were 12 years ago. The image is so familiar it's almost disorienting, a strange echo of the past overlaid onto the present. Find any promising candidates in that pile, Miss Whitfield? I ask casually from the doorway, leaning against the frame. She looks up from a particularly thick file and a smile touches her lips. A real smile this time, not the strained, polite interview smile from 2 weeks prior. This one reaches her eyes, crinkling the corners. Actually, yes, Miss Chen. There are quite a few, but this one. She taps the file in front of her. This young woman, Sophia Martinez. She's a junior. She's built a rather ingenious mobile application to help her grandmother manage her complex diabetes medication schedule. It even includes reminders in Spanish and tracks blood sugar readings. But, Margaret sighs softly, according to her personal essay and a rather disheartening note from her current math teacher, she thinks she's not smart enough for top tier computer science programs. Thinks she should aim for something more practical. The emotional connection is immediate, a sharp pang of recognition. The parallel is so stark it's almost painful. Sounds familiar, I say, stepping fully into her office. The air here smells of new carpet and fresh paint, overlaid with the scent of paper and potential. Maya, Margaret says, setting down Sophia Martinez's application and looking directly at me. She uses my first name, a subtle shift in our dynamic, an acknowledgement, perhaps, of something beyond employer and employee. I want you to know I'm not here seeking redemption. Redemption is something I have to earn in my own way, over time, through my actions. I'm here because these kids, kids like Sophia, kids like you were, they deserve so much better than I was capable of giving you back then. They deserve advocates who see their brilliance, not their barriers. I nod slowly, feeling something shift deep inside my chest. It's not forgiveness, not yet. That's a more complex, more private journey. But it's something akin to acceptance, an acknowledgement of her stated intent, a willingness to believe, tentatively, in the possibility of her change. There's something I want to show you, I tell her, a sudden impulse. I lead her back down the hall to my office, the one with the panoramic view and the ridiculously expensive leather chair. From a locked drawer in my mahogany desk, I pull out a simple framed photograph. It's not a photograph of a person, but of an object. My crumpled, tear-stained, yet fiercely clutched acceptance letter to the MIT summer coding camp. The same one I had thrust at her in her classroom all those years ago, the one she had so casually dismissed. I keep this as a reminder, I explain, holding it out to her. The glass reflects the city lights, the bustling life outside. Not of what you said to me that day, not anymore, but as a reminder of what I chose to do anyway. A reminder of the fire you accidentally lit. Margaret takes the frame, her fingers tracing the outline of the letter behind the glass. Her expression is unreadable for a long moment. Then she looks up at me, her eyes wide, filled with a complex mix of emotions. You kept it, after all this time? Your words could have destroyed me, Miss Whitfield, I say, my voice soft but clear. For a while they almost did, but they didn't. In the end, they just made me more determined. More resolved to prove that kids like me, kids like Sophia Martinez, deserve not just to dream, but to dream big, audaciously, without limits imposed by others' fears or prejudices. The afternoon sunlight, finally victorious over the earlier gloom, streams through the expansive windows, bathing the office in a warm golden glow. It feels like a benediction. 6 months later, the Chen Foundation's annual scholarship awards ceremony is held, by my specific request, in the main auditorium at Lincoln High School. It's a cavernous space, one that always seemed so intimidating when I was a student here. Tonight, it's filled with a different kind of energy, excitement, pride, the palpable hum of dreams on the verge of taking flight. As I walk across the same central courtyard where I once felt so small, so insignificant, I can hear the happy, excited chatter of students and their families gathering inside, a symphony of hope. The scent of popcorn from a concession stand and the slightly musty smell of the old auditorium mingle in the evening air. This is my ultimate quiet power move, though it feels less like a power move now and more like grace, leadership. Margaret, in her role as program director, introduces me to the assembled audience. Her voice is strong, confident, filled with genuine pride as she speaks about the Foundation's work, about the incredible students we're honoring tonight. As I step up to the podium, my heart full, I see her in the front row. She's sitting next to Sophia Martinez. Sophia is wearing a bright red future MIT student t-shirt and is absolutely beaming, her eyes shining with an incandescent joy. She clutches her scholarship certificate like it's the most precious thing in the world. When I was 16, I begin my speech, my voice echoing slightly in the large hall. Sitting in a classroom not too far from where we are tonight, someone I respected, an educator, told me I'd never amount to anything in the field I was passionate about, They were wrong. A ripple of murmurs goes through the audience. They were wrong, not because I was uniquely special or extraordinarily gifted. They were wrong because potential, true potential, can't be accurately measured by someone's current circumstances, by their background, or by the limited imagination of others. I glance towards the front row. In the audience, I spot Margaret discreetly wiping away tears. But I know, with a certainty that settles deep in my bones, that these are not tears of guilt anymore, not solely. They are tears of pride. For Sophia, for the 37 other scholarship recipients whose names will be called tonight, for the profound, transformative possibility of second chances, for both students and, yes, for educators too. The transformation is palpable, not just in her, but in the atmosphere of the room, in the hopeful faces looking up at me. After the ceremony, amidst the joyful chaos of families congratulating their children, photographers snapping pictures, and students excitedly discussing their futures, Margaret approaches me by the side of the stage. The remnants of her earlier emotion are still visible in her slightly reddened eyes, but her smile is genuine, radiant. "Thank you," she says simply, her voice a little husky. "For what?" I ask, though I think I already know. "For teaching me something profound," she replies. "For teaching me that the most important thing we, as educators, can give our students isn't protection from failure or a curated list of realistic options. It's unwavering belief, belief in their ability to overcome obstacles, to learn from their mistakes, to rise to challenges they can't even imagine yet, belief in their inherent worth and boundless potential." I look around the bustling auditorium, at the students hugging their tearful, proud families, at the oversized ceremonial checks and certificates representing dreams given tangible wings, at the vibrant, hopeful energy that fills the very space where my own dreams were once so casually dismissed. I think of the foundation I built, initially fueled by spite and a burning need for revenge, but which has grown into something so much bigger, so much more beautiful than that. It has become a beacon. The sound of families celebrating, of laughter and applause, and heartfelt congratulations echoes through the auditorium, a joyful cacophony. "You know what the funny thing is, Margaret?" I tell her, using her first name easily now. "You were right about one thing that day, all those years ago." She looks at me, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "You said I'd never amount to anything in tech," I clarify with a small smile. "And in a way, you were right. I amounted to something much, much bigger than just tech." As we walk out of the auditorium together, side by side, the cool night air feels refreshing. Across the street, I can see the light on in Margaret's office at the Chen Foundation. She's been staying late almost every night, meticulously reviewing applications, mentoring students, planning new outreach programs. Working with kids who remind her, no doubt, of a certain 16-year-old girl with an audacious dream. The girl who was once told she'd never amount to anything now leads a foundation worth tens of millions of dollars, changing hundreds of lives. The teacher who uttered those crushing words now spends her days, and many of her nights, passionately telling kids that they can and will achieve anything. Sometimes I realize the best, most satisfying revenge isn't about retribution or proving someone wrong in a way that diminishes them. Sometimes it's about building something so beautiful, so impactful, so undeniably good that it transforms everyone it touches, even, eventually, the very people who once sought to hold you back, the people who hurt you. The rain has started again, a gentle Seattle drizzle this time. But as I walk towards my car, the city lights reflecting in the puddles on the pavement, it doesn't sound like a countdown anymore. This time, it sounds distinctly like applause.